She slapped me so hard the wishbone snapped in my hand. Everyone kept carving the turkey. If you think the worst part of the story is the slap, wait until you see the Thanksgiving deed transfer. She tried to slide under my father's trembling hand. By sundown, I had the hospital bracelet, the photographs, and the first proof my stepmother had been practicing this scene for years. My name is Trinity Day. I'm 29 years old, and I'm the lead designer at Northlight Atelier in Silverford. I build spaces that are clean, functional, and honest: concrete, steel, glass, and light. I get paid to create environments where people can breathe. My own life is built on the same principles. My loft is minimalist, a fortress of calm above the city noise. I am financially independent. I am successful. I am, by every metric I control, doing just fine. This past Tuesday, I closed the biggest deal of my career, the full interior concept for the new Hawthorne Restaurant Group, a 3-year project, multi-location. A celebration was in order. My team and I went out for drinks. My phone buzzed, but it wasn't my father. It's never my father, not really. For the past decade, my birthdays have been exercises in silence. My 21st, I sat by the phone, foolishly waiting. My 25th, I was in Chicago for a conference. I got a text from him at 11:40 p.m. Just 2 words. Happy birthday. I knew. Even then, he'd probably typed it in the bathroom, hiding from her. Marla Voss entered our lives 6 months after my mother's funeral. She didn't walk in. She annexed. She was a strategic planner, and our grief-stricken family was new. Vulnerable territory. She didn't just marry my father, Harrison Day. She absorbed his life, his assets, and his traditions, replacing them with her own. Our quiet Christmases became catered galas. Summer barbecues became silent. White tablecloth affairs. Marla curated our family, editing out the parts she found inconvenient, namely, me. I live alone. My loft is my sanctuary. All polished concrete and exposed brick, with a wall of north-facing windows. It's organized. Every object has a purpose. There is no clutter. After closing the Hawthorne deal, I stood by that window for an hour, just watching the traffic, feeling the clean satisfaction of a job well done. I didn't need anyone's approval. I paid my own rent. I built my own life. Then the invitation arrived. It was thick, cream-colored cardstock, the kind that costs $10 a sheet, embossed with the Voss Ridge Estate logo, a name Marla invented for my father's house in Harbor Glen, a formal, third-person invitation to Thanksgiving dinner, and at the bottom, in Marla's looping, aggressive cursive, a little note. Do be on time. Trinity. Appropriate attire is expected. I hadn't been for 2 years. The last time, Marla had spent the entire meal detailing my questionable career choices and the unfortunate state of my apartment. It was easier to stay in Silverford, order takeout, and work. But this time was different. I decided to go. My reasoning was singular. My father, I'd seen him a month prior. Marla had allowed a brief, 1-hour lunch at a restaurant of her choosing. I watched him, his hands, once so steady, the hands that taught me to draft, to build models, to tie my shoes. They trembled. He'd reached for his water glass, and his fingers shook so much that water sloshed onto the table. He'd looked terrified, not at the spill, but at Marla's sharp intake of breath. His health was declining. I could see it in the new hollows under his eyes, and the way his suit jacket, once perfectly tailored, now hung from his shoulders. My objective for this Thanksgiving was simple. I wasn't going for the food, or the strained conversation, or the family performance. I was going to give my father a hug, a real one, the kind where you hold on long enough to feel the other person's heartbeat, long enough to know if they are okay. I drove the 90 minutes to Harbor Glen, Voss Ridge, as Marla called it, sat on a hill, an imposing structure of dark stone and glass. It was my childhood home, but it was no longer familiar. The moment I stepped out of my car, the air was thick with it, gardenias, Marla's perfume, It was a suffocating, chemical sweetness that clung to the drapes, the carpets, the very air in the house. It was a scent of occupation. Marla's daughter, Sloane, opened the door. Sloane was 26, a mirror of her mother in a younger, sleeker package. She ran a lifestyle blog. Her eyes did a quick, dismissive scan of my outfit. A simple, black cashmere dress and leather boots. Appropriate attire, but not her appropriate attire. "Trinity," she said, her voice flat, bored. "You're here?" "Sloane?" I stepped inside. The house was full of people. Marla's friends, business associates. I saw my father across the room, seated in a high-backed chair near the fireplace, looking small. But before I could move, Marla clapped her hands. "Everyone! Everyone!" Her voice cut through the chatter like glass. "We're almost ready for the carving. But first, Harrison and I wanted to share a small moment of connection. Our photographer is here to capture it." A man with a large professional camera stepped out from an alcove. A private photographer. For Thanksgiving dinner. Marla glided over to my father's chair. She placed a manicured hand on his shoulder, leaned down, and kissed his temple. Her smile aimed directly at the lens. "I am so thankful for this man," she announced to the room, though her eyes were on the photographer. "My rock, my king." The photographer's flash popped. Once, twice. My father looked bewildered, a puppet in her show. He gave me a weak, fleeting look. This was it. This was my chance. The photographer was checking his settings. Marla was distracted, gesturing for him to get a different angle. I walked past Sloane. I navigated around the coffee table stacked with art books Marla had never opened. I reached my father's chair. He saw me, and for a second, his eyes cleared. "Trin," he whispered. I didn't say anything. I leaned down, bypassing Marla's staged tableau, and wrapped my arms around my father's thin shoulders. I pulled him close. I could feel the sharp ridge of his spine through his wool sweater. I buried my face in his shoulder, inhaling the faint, familiar scent of him, soap and paper, hidden beneath Marla's suffocating gardenias. I held on, counting the seconds. 1, 2, 3. A sharp, violent crack echoed through the room. My head snapped back, a bright, searing pain exploding across my left cheek. The force was stunning. My eyes watered instantly. Marla stood over me, her hands still raised, her face a mask of cold fury. Her voice was a low, venomous hiss, meant only for me but loud enough for the entire silent room to hear. "You are interrupting my moment." The silence was absolute. The photographer froze, his camera halfway to his eye. Sloane, I saw from the corner of my vision, was smiling, a tiny, satisfied smirk. Every guest was motionless, staring. My cheek throbbed, a hot, spreading fire. I looked at my father. He was staring at Marla, his eyes wide, his face pale with a familiar, practiced terror. He opened his mouth. His voice trembled. "I'm sorry, Marla," he stammered, his gaze fixed on her, not on me, on her. "I'm sorry. She just cut in. I'm sorry." He apologized. To her? I felt the tears, hot and acidic, pushing at the back of my eyes. I refused to let them fall. I swallowed, the lump in my throat hard as a stone. I stood up straight, pulling back from my father's chair. I looked at his downcast, frightened face. I looked at Marla's triumphant one. I didn't say a word. I turned, my back straight, and walked out of the dining room. My steps were silent on the thick Persian rug. The room remained frozen until I reached the marble entryway. As I opened the heavy front door, I heard, faintly, the sound of the photographer's flash popping again, and then Marla's bright, clear voice. "Now, where were we? The turkey." I didn't leave the house. I left the room. The echo of the slap seemed to follow me, a dull, thudding sound that matched the new pulse in my cheek. I walked down the main hall, turned a corner, and pushed open the door to the downstairs powder room. The space was unrecognizable. Marla had ripped out the classic pedestal sink and hexagonal tile, replacing them with black marble and offensively bright gold fixtures. The air, even in this small room, was heavy with the gardenia plug-in diffuser humming in the wall socket. I locked the door. I looked in the mirror. My cheek was a blazing, angry red, the white imprint of her fingers already fading, leaving a uniform, swollen surface. I ran the cold water until it was icy, pressing my damp fingers to the skin, trying to cool the burn. I opened the mirrored cabinet, searching for aspirin, ibuprofen, anything. My head was beginning to ache. There were no painkillers, only rows of Marla's expensive serums, and, tucked behind them, a small white pharmacy box. My father's name was on the label. Harrison Day. I picked it up. The prescription was for lorazepam. Dr. Archer Lane. The date filled was 2 days ago, November 22nd. Inside the box were 2 foil blister packs. One was full, the other had 4, maybe 5. Pills punched out. The dosage was 0.5 milligrams. The instructions said, 1 tablet as needed for anxiety. This was not a sleeping pill. This was a sedative. As I stood there, holding the box, Marla's voice carried down the hall, sharp and loud, slicing through the polite murmur of the party. Absolutely not. Don't let him pour the wine. His hands are shaking again. It's embarrassing. A cold stillness settled over me. His hands were shaking. My hand, I realized, was perfectly steady. I pulled out my phone. The screen's light felt too bright. I placed the box and the blister packs on the black marble counter. I photographed the label. I photographed the used pack next to the full one. I photographed the doctor's name, the pharmacy, the date. I put everything back. I tucked the box behind the serums, aligning the edges exactly as I had found them. I left the bathroom and stood in the hallway, listening. The house felt wrong. I looked at the walls. The photographs were gone, all of them. My entire childhood, me on my dad's shoulders at the lake, my mother teaching me to ride my bike, all of us at the old Red Willow cabin, erased. They had been replaced by a curated gallery of the Voss Day Alliance. The centerpiece was an enormous, professionally shot portrait from last Christmas. Marla was seated, regal in dark green velvet. Sloane, her daughter, stood beside her, hand on her mother's shoulder. My father was in the picture, but he was on the edge of the frame, standing awkwardly, almost appearing as an afterthought. His smile was thin. I searched the rest of the wall. I finally found myself, at the very end, by the door to the utility closet, hung a small 8x10 frame. It was my college graduation photo. I was alone in it. I had been marginalized, an appendix to the main story. I didn't go back to the dining room. I took the hallway toward the kitchen. The catering staff, strangers in black uniforms, bustled around the massive center island, and then I saw her, by the sinks, loading a dishwasher. Adele. She had been with our family since before my mother died. She was the last piece of my old life, and Marla, for some reason, had kept her on. She saw me. Her eyes immediately went to my red cheek, and then, just as quickly, darted away. She turned back to the sink. "Adele," I said, my voice low. "Miss Trinity," she whispered, not looking at me. "You shouldn't be back here. Mrs. Voss doesn't like it." His hands, Adele, the shaking. She stopped loading the dishwasher, her back still to me. "It comes and goes." "Is it new?" She hesitated. She picked up a pot, scrubbed it with too much force. "No." She leaned closer, her voice dropping so low I could barely hear her over the running water. "It's the pills, and the tea she gives him." I showed her the picture of the lorazepam box on my phone. She glanced at it and nodded once, her lips pressed into a thin white line. "He's been nodding off after dinner for the past month," she whispered. "Just gone, slumped in his chair. She tells everyone he's just tired. But he's not just tired, he's fogged." I had to go back. I couldn't leave him in that room alone. I walked back into the dining room. The performance was in full swing. The slap, the apology, my exit. It had all been forgotten. A brief intermission. Someone was telling a loud story about a golf trip. I slipped into my chair. My plate was still there, the food untouched, now cold. I watched my father. He looked diminished, his eyes glassy. Then I watched Marla. She was at his side, attending to his plate. But she wasn't just cutting his turkey. She was dicing it, with a knife and fork. She was mincing the meat, the stuffing, the green beans, and the mashed potatoes into a homogeneous pile. She was mashing his food, as if he were an infant. "There you go, Harrison," she cooed, her voice loud enough for the nearby guests to hear. "You're having a little trouble today. Darling, let me make it easy for you." He stared down at the plate, his humiliation a palpable thing. He took a small bite of the mush. I gripped my knife, my knuckles white. I focused on my breathing. Inhale, exhale. I was a designer observing a structural flaw. I was not a daughter watching her father be dismantled. Marla, satisfied, turned back to her guests. She had a silver tray on the table beside her, holding champagne flutes for a toast she was clearly planning. Tucked next to the flutes was a thick, legal-sized manila envelope. As she laughed, she gestured with a sweeping theatrical motion. Her hand hit the tray. The envelope slid off, landing silently on the carpet, almost touching my foot. I bent to retrieve it for her. I saw the label, neatly typed. Thanksgiving Financial Power of Attorney. My fingers had just brushed the corner of the envelope when a hand shot past me, snatching it away. "I'll take that!" Sloane's voice was a sharp bark. She grabbed the envelope so quickly. Her movement was almost violent. It was a guilty reflex, a startled, animal panic. She shot me a look of pure, unadulterated hatred before smoothing her expression and handing the envelope back to her mother. "Be careful, Mother," Sloane said, her voice now syrupy. Marla glanced at me, her eyes cold and flat, before tucking the envelope firmly under her thigh. She picked up her champagne glass. A power of attorney, on Thanksgiving. The rest of the meal was a blur. My father seemed to sink further into his chair, his eyes closing for long seconds. When dessert was served, he didn't touch his. "I think Dad needs to rest," I said, standing up, my voice cut across the table. Marla fixed me with a smile that didn't touch her eyes. "He's just fine, Trinity. We're about to have our toast." "He's exhausted." I didn't look at her. I walked around the table to my father's chair. "Dad, let's go upstairs." I put my hand on his arm. He startled, his eyes flying open. "Trin," he mumbled. He tried to stand, but his legs were unsteady. I put my arm around his waist, pulling him up, taking his weight. He was limp. "I've got him," I said to the room. I ignored Marla's sharp intake of breath and began to walk him out of the dining room. The journey up the main staircase was slow. He leaned on me, his breathing shallow and rattling. "You're okay, Dad. Just lean on me, one step at a time." We reached the landing. We entered their bedroom, his bedroom. It smelled like her, gardenias, and something chemical. I guided him to the edge of the massive four-poster bed and sat him down. He slumped forward. I knelt to take off his shoes. As I lifted his foot, the cuff of his cashmere sweater rode up his arm. I stopped. On the pale, thin skin of his inner wrist, I saw them, bruises, dark, ugly splotches of purple and deep red. But it was the shape that made my stomach clench. They were circular, small, perfect circles, as if he had been gripped by fingertips or held down by some kind of clamp. My breath caught. I stared at them, the pattern searing itself into my memory. Gently, my hand trembling, I pulled his sweater cuff back down, covering the marks. I stood up. He was watching me. His eyes were murky with the sedative, but behind the fog, I saw a flicker of the man who had raised me, a flicker of profound terror. "Trin," he slurred. "It's okay, Dad," I whispered, my throat tight. "You just need to rest." I lifted his legs onto the bed and pulled the heavy comforter over him. I walked to the door, my hand on the knob. I looked back at him. "Trinity." His voice was a dry rasp, but it was urgent. It stopped me. I turned back. He was fighting to keep his eyes open, struggling to focus on me. "Don't sign," he whispered. I took a step closer. "Don't sign what, Dad? The papers?" His eyes were closing. He fought them open one last time. His voice was a thread. Don't let them make you sign." And then the drugs won. His body went slack, and his breathing evened out into a deep, medicated sleep. I closed the door, the latch clicking shut with a terrible finality. Don't let them make you sign. He didn't mean himself. He meant me. They needed my signature for something. I left him in the room. A chill settling into my bones that had nothing to do with the November air. His words echoed. Don't let them make you sign. He was terrified, and he was warning me. I walked down the main staircase, my steps silent on the thick runner Marla had installed. The sounds of the party, the clinking of glasses, the forced laughter, Marla's bright, performative voice drifted from the dining room. I bypassed the hall, slipped through the dark kitchen, and pushed open the heavy glass door to the back porch. The cold was immediate and sharp. It bit at my face, a welcome contrast to the suffocating, gardenia-laced heat inside. I walked to the far end, into the shadows, and pulled out my phone. My cheek throbbed with a dull, steady ache. I scrolled to Nia Calder. We'd been best friends since orientation at Silverford University. She was now a partner at Brook & Ledger, specializing in high-asset real estate law. She was the sharpest person I knew. She answered on the second ring. "Trin? It's Thanksgiving. What's wrong?" She slapped me. "Nia." The words came out before I could stop them. "She what? Who? Marla?" There was a sound of a door closing on her end. "Where are you?" "I'm at their house, Voss Ridge. That's not why I'm calling. Nia, she's drugging him." I explained it all, fast. The lorazepam in the cabinet, the pharmacy date from 2 days ago, his trembling hands, his glassy eyes, the way she mashed his food, Adele's whispered comment about him nodding off for a month, the bruises on his wrist, the envelope. What did the envelope say? Nia's voice was all business now. Thanksgiving financial power of attorney. A sharp exhale on the other end. "Trinity, listen to me. This is a classic, ugly move. We call it the holiday ambush. You get the target elderly. You exhaust them. You overmedicate them. You ply them with alcohol, and you surround them with friendly faces. Then you slide the documents in front of them between the pumpkin pie and the coffee. It's coercive. It's designed to be," my father's whisper, "don't let them make you sign. She needs my signature for something. Nia, he warned me." "You? Why you? Are you a co-trustee on an old family trust? Are you a beneficiary? Does your signature release something?" My mind raced. I don't know. My mother, before she died, she had her own investments, but everything got tangled when Marla. "Okay, we'll sort that later. Right now, your father is in medical danger and under duress. The POA is the immediate threat. A power of attorney gives her full control. She can liquidate his assets, sell his property, change his beneficiaries, all while he's napping. She could drain him by Monday." A memory surfaced, cold and clear. 2 months ago, at a dreadful country club brunch Marla had insisted I attend. She was holding court with 3 other women, all diamonds and surgical precision. "We're diversifying, of course," Marla had bragged, sipping her mimosa. "Harrison and I are sinking a massive stake into the new Oakmere Haven complex. It's a luxury assisted living facility. Invitation only. The buy-in is high, 8 figures. But the returns are staggering. We just need to free up some liquidity before the end of the year." "Nia," I said, my voice low. "She needs liquidity. Fast." She told her friends she was investing in a nursing home. "There it is," Nia said. "She's cashing him out to fund her deal. Trinity, is he lucid?" "No, he's barely conscious. I just put him to bed." "Good. Can you get him out of there?" "I can't. He's dead weight. And she'd just report me for kidnapping or something. She has a house full of witnesses." "She's smart. Okay, new plan. You are a witness. Your objective is to document time, place, behavior, get photo, get audio, get video. If she tries to make him sign, you object, loudly. You state, he does not have the capacity to sign this document. You use those exact words. If she has a notary, get the notary's name. This is all about building a case for undue influence and lack of capacity. Okay, document, object. And Trin? If his breathing becomes shallow, or you can't wake him, you call 911 immediately. You report a suspected overdose. You understand? I understand. Call me back if anything moves. I hung up and stood in the cold, my mind clicking into place. The shock and the pain receded, replaced by a cold, structural anger. I was no longer a grieving daughter. I was a designer who had just found a fatal flaw in the foundation. I went back inside, locking the porch door behind me. I needed a glass of water. I needed a baseline. I walked into the kitchen. The caterers were packing up, quiet and efficient. I went to the small desk by the back door, the one place my father still used. His things were there, crammed into a corner of Marla's pristine kitchen, a stack of mail, a notepad. A grocery list was on the pad, dated 2 days ago, milk, bread, stamps, pay gardener. The handwriting was a spider's scrawl, the letters shaky, descending downhill. It was painful to look at. I opened the drawer beneath it. Marla hadn't completely sanitized this. It was full of old pens, rubber bands, and, in the back, a small bundle of old mail. I shuffled through it and found it. A postcard from a business trip to Chicago, from 7 years ago, before Marla. Trin, it read. The bean is impressive. See you Saturday. Love, Dad. The signature was bold, confident, the H and D full of powerful, fluid loops. I took out the grocery list and held it next to the postcard. It wasn't just a difference in steadiness, it was a different signature. The slant was wrong. The connections between the letters were gone. The man who signed that postcard could not have written this list. And the man who wrote this list, what had he signed? I put the postcard in my pocket. My eyes drifted to the pantry. Marla's pantry. It was a floor-to-ceiling monument to her control. Everything was in matching glass jars. Everything had a label printed from her custom label maker. It was alphabetical. Allspice, anise, basil, cardamom. I heard a sound. From the living room, just off the kitchen. Sloane's voice. She was speaking in that bright, artificially intimate tone she used for her followers. You all ask me how she does it. My mom, Marla, is just... she's everything. She hosted this incredible Thanksgiving feast, and she still looks like a queen, and she takes such amazing care of my stepdad. He's been a little under the weather, and she's just a total angel. I peeked around the corner. Sloane was holding her phone up, live streaming. Marla was posing in the background, smiling faintly, a picture of wifely devotion. They were building a public narrative, creating an alibi in real time. I turned back to the pantry. Something was wrong with the spice rack. It was too perfect. I stepped inside. Allspice, anise, basil, cardamom, celery seed, cloves. The jars were large, opaque ceramic. I reached out and tapped the one labeled cloves. It didn't rattle. It was solid. I gripped the jar and pulled. A small, 12 by 12 section of the shelf, jars included, swung toward me on a silent hinge. Behind it, set into the wall, was a small, black digital safe with a keypad. My blood ran cold. I took a picture of the safe. I took a picture of the open hinge. I gently pushed the facade back into place. It clicked shut, the cloves jar aligning perfectly with celery seed. I heard Marla's voice from the main hall. Oh, darling, you're awake. You just needed a little rest. Come, come. Our friends are just about to leave, and we have one tiny piece of family business to finish. I stepped out of the pantry, my heart hammering. She was leading him down the stairs, or rather, dragging him. He was barely on his feet, his left arm slung over her shoulder, his head bowed. He looked like a prisoner of war. Sloane was in front of them, walking backward, filming the descent. See? She's so strong, literally supporting him. The best. Marla maneuvered him into his chair at the head of the table. He slumped into it, his eyes half closed. The remaining guests, 6 or 7 of them, looked on with polite, concerned smiles. Marla, her face flushed with triumph, picked up a champagne flute and tapped it with a spoon. "A quick toast," she announced, beaming, "to family, to health, and to the woman who works tirelessly, day and night, to keep this family intact and secure, me." A few people murmured, "To Marla," and sipped. "And," Marla continued, her voice buttery smooth, "speaking of security, we just have a tiny little family formality to finalize, just validating the family fund. It will only take a moment, and we are just so lucky that my dearest, oldest friend, Mrs. Archer Klein, could be here to officiate." A woman I had barely noticed, dressed in a severe navy blue suit, stood up from a table near the fireplace. She was holding a leather briefcase. My stomach clenched. Dr. Archer Lane, Mrs. Archer Klein, the doctor who prescribed the sedatives, and the notary, a husband and wife team. Marla slid the Thanksgiving Financial Power of Attorney envelope from her handbag. She pulled out a thick sheaf of documents, at least 20 pages, and fanned them out next to my father's pie plate. "Here we are, darling," Marla cooed, placing a heavy, expensive-looking pen in my father's hand. She tried to wrap his limp fingers around it. "It's just the fund papers. Harrison, just like we practiced. You just need to sign here. And here." Mrs. Klein stepped forward, opened her briefcase, and took out a notary stamp and an ink pad. My father was staring at the page, his eyes unfocused. He made a small, groaning sound. "Stop." My voice cut through the room like a shard of glass. Every head turned. Marla's smile froze, then twisted into a mask of fury. "Trinity, this is a private family matter. This is not your concern." "It's my father," I said, stepping forward. I placed my hand on the table, next to the papers. "And he is my concern. If this is just a family fund validation, then no one should mind if we read it aloud first." The air in the room turned to ice. The guests froze. Mrs. Klein, the notary, paused, her hand hovering over her stamp. "Read it," I repeated, my voice steady and cold. Every single word. Marla's face, a perfect porcelain mask, cracked. The smile was gone, replaced by a cold reptilian stillness. The guests, trapped in their seats, looked anywhere but at me or at her. The notary, Mrs. Archer Klein, cleared her throat, a dry, nervous sound. "This is highly irregular," Mrs. Klein said, her voice clipped and professional, but her eyes darted to Marla. "It's a standard family trust validation, a formality." "Then read it," I repeated. Marla snatched the top page from the stack, her hand shaking with a fury that vibrated under her skin. "This is absurd. Trinity, you have been hostile since the moment you arrived, covered in that city grime. You are upsetting your father." "My father is unresponsive," I shot back, my voice cutting through the tension. "He can't sign a grocery list, let alone this. He can't even hold his own fork. I know. I watched you mash his food." I reached out and took the document, not from Marla, but from the stack in the middle of the table. I lifted the cover page. The title was in bold, 14-point font. I read it aloud, my voice carrying clearly through the silent, heavy air. "This document is entitled, 'Durable Power of Attorney and Immediate, Irrevocable Transfer of Shares, Voss Ridge Trust.'" A collective, faint gasp came from the remaining guests. One elderly couple near the fireplace, friends of my father's I barely recognized, began to stand up, fumbling with their napkins. "Now, Marla," the man said, his voice quavering. "Perhaps this isn't the proper time, it being Thanksgiving and all." "It's the perfect time," Marla snapped, her composure shattering. "We are all family here. This is a celebration of our future security." "I am not a party to the Voss Ridge Trust," I stated, my gaze fixed on the notary. Why does my father's power of attorney require my signature? Mrs. Klein stepped forward, attempting to radiate a calm authority she did not feel. It's a simple consent provision, Miss Day. As a potential residual beneficiary of your father's original estate, your signature streamlines the process. It's a waiver. It confirms you waive your right to contest the transfer at a later date. Waives my right to contest. Nia's voice echoed in my head. She's cashing him out to fund her deal. It's a very long document, Mrs. Klein continued, smiling thinly. We wouldn't want to bore the guests. It's standard to simply execute the signature pages. We can sign it in parts. Harrison first, then you. No, I said. We're not signing in parts, and neither is he. I want a full, collated copy of this entire document, now, for my own attorney to review. We don't have a copier readily available, Mrs. Klein said, her eyes narrowing. It's a holiday. Then I'll take this one. I started to fold the document, my hand moving toward my coat. Marla lunged, but I was faster. I pulled my phone from my pocket with my other hand. I didn't fumble with codes. I swiped to the audio recording app and hit the red button. For the record, I announced, my voice loud and clear. It is approximately 6:30 p.m. on Thanksgiving Day, November 24th. I am in the dining room at Voss Ridge. Present in this room are Harrison Day, Marla Voss, Sloan Voss, Mrs. Archer Klein, a public notary, and approximately 6 other guests who are all witnesses. I am officially stating that the principal, Harrison Day, is medically incapacitated, non-communicative, and is being subjected to coercion. How dare you? Marla's voice was a shriek. She abandoned the devoted wife persona instantly. The mask was not just off, it was vaporized. You waltz in here, smelling of your independence, after abandoning your father for years. I am the one who feeds him. I am the one who bathes him. I am the one who holds his hand when he's sick, while you are off playing at your career in that filthy city. The accusation hung in the air, barbed and ugly, designed to paint me as the villain. You're jealous, she spat, her face contorted. You're just jealous that you are not the center of this family. You're not the one in control. This isn't about jealousy, Marla, I said, my voice dropping, becoming as cold and hard as the steel I used in my designs. This is about pharmacology. I turned my attention to the notary, who looked like she wanted to bolt. Mrs. Klein, your husband, Dr. Archer Lane, prescribed my father 0.5 milligram tablets of lorazepam just 2 days ago. The prescription instructions are 1 tablet as needed for anxiety. Is that correct? Mrs. Klein's face went white. She looked at Marla, a quick, panicked glance that confirmed everything. I am not my husband, she stammered. I am not privy to his patient files. That's a violation of privacy. That's convenient, I said. Marla, how many as-needed pills has he had today? Was it 1? Or was it 4? Was it before you mashed his food? Or was it after? What's the dosage? Marla, tell the room. How many milligrams of a powerful sedative did you give my father before you put a 20-page legal document in front of him? The guests were now all standing, their faces a mixture of horror and morbid fascination. This was no longer a family squabble. This was an indictment. That is a private medical matter between a husband and his wife, Marla said, her voice trembling with rage. It becomes a public legal matter when you pair it with a notary and a power of attorney, I said. Dad? I turned to my father. He was slumped in the chair, his head lolling. His eyes were open, but they were seeing nothing. Dad, Harrison, can you tell us where you are? Do you know what day it is? He tried to lift his head. His mouth opened. A sound came out, a low, thick moan, the sound of a man trying to speak through wet cement. Trin, nuh. His tongue was heavy, useless. It was the classic, terrifying sign of a sedative overdose. His eyes wouldn't focus. He's slurring, I said, my voice clinical, holding the phone steady. He is not lucid. He has no idea what is happening. He cannot sign. "This is a performance," Sloane suddenly yelled, stepping forward, her own phone up, predictably recording me. "She's upsetting him. She did this. He was fine before she got here. She stressed him out." "Then you won't mind if I get a second opinion?" I kept my phone recording audio. I went to my call list and dialed Nia. My hands were shaking, but my voice was steady. "Nia Calder," she answered, her voice a lifeline of competence. "Nia, it's Trinity. I'm putting you on speakerphone. You are now on a live audio recording with multiple witnesses." I hit the speaker button. Nia's sharp, courtroom-ready voice filled the stunned dining room. "This is Nia Calder of Brook and Ledger, acting as counsel for Trinity Day. Who am I speaking with?" "This is Marla Voss. This is my home. You have no right to interfere in my family's private affairs." "Mrs. Voss," Nia interrupted, her tone like ice. "I am being advised that you are attempting to have Harrison Day, a man who is currently under heavy sedation, sign a durable power of attorney and a transfer of shares. I am formally demanding, on behalf of his daughter and as an officer of the court, that you cease all attempts at execution immediately. This action is being taken under duress, and we assert Mr. Day lacks all legal capacity. Madam Notary, what is your name?" "Mrs." Klein looked like she was going to be sick. I am. I'm just a guest here." "You are a commissioned notary public, and you are about to participate in a felony," Nia snapped. "You will be reported to the State Bar and the Secretary of State by 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. What is your name?" This was the breaking point. Sloane lunged. She didn't go for the documents. She went for my phone. She was fast, her acrylic nails raking the back of my hand as she snatched the phone from my grasp, jabbing the end call button with her thumb. "Get out of our house," she screamed, her face inches from mine, spittle flying. "You're done." The audio recording stopped. The line to Nia was dead. I looked at my hand. 4 angry red scratches were welling up with bright beads of blood. "Give me the phone, Sloane." "Go get it," she sneered, and with a flick of her wrist, she tossed it. The phone skittered across the polished marble floor of the entryway, coming to rest near the heavy front door. It happened in a split second. As Sloane turned back to me, triumphant, a second figure moved from the shadows of the kitchen hallway. Adele. She didn't run, she walked, with a calm, deliberate purpose, past the gawking guests, to the front door. She bent down, picked up my phone, and walked back. She didn't look at Sloane. She didn't look at Marla. She walked directly to me and placed the phone back in my hand. As her hand pulled away, her fingers brushed mine, and I felt something small and cold press into my palm. "A key?" She held my gaze for 1 second. Her eyes flicked, just once, toward the kitchen, toward the pantry. "The pantry, the safe behind the cloves." "Thank you, Adele," I said, my voice thick. I closed my hand around the key. I redialed Nia, but I didn't put her on speaker. I held the phone to my ear, turning my back to the room, walking toward the window as if to get better reception. "She grabbed the phone," I said, my voice low and urgent. "Nia, she assaulted me. I'm bleeding." "I heard. Is your father okay? Are you?" "I'm fine. Dad is slurring. He's barely conscious. It's bad. Nia." "Good," Nia said, and I knew what she meant. "It's ugly, but it's good evidence. Now, listen, audio is one thing. Video is better. Use your camera, not the audio recorder. Go to video. Get his face. Get his slurring. Get the documents on the table. State the date and time again. Get the notary's face. Get everyone. This is your insurance policy. This is what we use to unwind all of it." I turned back to the room. My phone held up, the red record light now on. The screen was facing me, but the camera was facing them. "Nia is still on the line," I lied, my voice ringing with new authority. "She advises me to create a video record of my father's medical state for the police." The word police sucked the last of the air from the room. The remaining guests, the ones who hadn't already fled, began to grab their coats in earnest. "Get out," Marla whispered, her voice venomous, directed at them. "All of you, get out now. The party is over." They scrambled, not making eye contact, not saying goodbye. Within 30 seconds, the room was empty. Just me, Marla, Sloane, my unconscious father, and the terrified notary. "This is over, Marla," I said, the phone still recording. "It is not over," Marla shrieked, her carefully constructed world crumbling. She grabbed the documents and the pen. She ran to my father's side. "Harrison, wake up. You have to sign this. You promised." She grabbed his limp hand, the pen still clutched in her fingers, and tried to force his hand toward the signature line on the document. "Stop it!" I shouted, moving closer. "I am recording this. You are physically forcing him. You are committing battery." "You don't understand!" Marla screamed at me, her face a mask of pure desperation, tears of rage cutting clean tracks through her expensive foundation. "It has to be done today. It has to. The bank closes the wire transfer at midnight for the end-of-month accounting. It has to be today." There it was. The confession, the motive, the timeline. I zoomed in on her hand forcing his. I panned to the notary, who was backing toward the door, her briefcase clutched to her chest. "Mrs. Klein," I said, my voice cold. "Are you going to notarize that signature? I'll make sure to get your stamp in the video." The notary ripped her stamp off the table and fled, pulling the front door shut behind her with a definitive slam. It was just us, the family. Marla let go of my father's hand. He slumped, groaning. She stood up, breathing hard, staring at me with a hatred so pure it was almost beautiful. "You've ruined everything," she whispered. "No," I said. I stopped recording. I put the phone in my pocket. "You did." I looked at my father, asleep, a victim in his own home. I looked at the small key now clutched in my bleeding hand. "I'm leaving now," I said, but I wasn't going out the front door. I turned my back on them. Marla was frozen by the table, her hands clenched on the back of my father's chair. Sloane was panting. Her phone still pointed at me, though her hand was shaking. The air was dead, heavy, and sour. I walked into the entryway, my footsteps loud on the marble. I grabbed my wool coat from the hall tree. I pulled it on, my movements deliberate. I felt their eyes on my back, watching me. I opened the heavy front door. The November wind was sharp, and it felt clean. It rushed into the house, swirling the smell of gardenias and defeat. I stepped out onto the porch and pulled the door shut behind me, the thud of the lock echoing in the night. I didn't move. I stood in the absolute darkness of the porch, invisible from the street. I counted to 30, my breath pluming in front of my face. I listened. I heard the lock on the front door turn, a deadbolt, locking me out. I heard Marla's voice, muffled but rising in panic. "Sloane, call Ron. Call him now. And get Klein back here. Tell her she can't leave. Tell her—" I heard Sloane, her voice sulky. "Mother, she recorded you. She recorded everything. It's over." "It is not over." The sound of a hand slapping a table. "He will sign it. I will get him to sign it." I heard their footsteps move away from the door, retreating toward the stairs. They were going back up, back to him. I waited, another full minute. The key Adele had given me was digging into my palm, a small, sharp promise. I slipped around the side of the house, my boots crunching on the gravel path. I knew this house. I knew its weaknesses. I moved past the dark windows of the dining room and went to the mudroom door, the one by the garage. It was always unlocked. It wasn't. Marla had changed the locks. But the garage, I typed in the code. My father's birthday. She hadn't been thorough enough to change that. The keypad beeped, and with a soft click, the side door to the garage opened. I slipped inside, into the darkness, thick with the smell of gasoline and old fertilizer. I moved through the garage and opened the interior door that led directly into the kitchen. It was silent. The caterers were long gone. The kitchen was dark, save for the faint, green glow of the microwave clock and the blue under-cabinet LEDs Marla had installed. I didn't go to the pantry first. I went to the desk in the corner, my father's small, cluttered island in Marla's sea of sterile white. The stack of mail was still there, where I'd found the postcard. I pulled open the wide, shallow drawer, the one filled with his stationery. I sorted through the clutter, pens, paper clips, and underneath a checkbook, a stack of papers held together with a binder clip. The top document was a statement from Day Freight Line, my father's company, the company he had built from nothing. I scanned it. It wasn't a profit and loss statement. It was a corporate filing, a change of officer form, dated June 10th, just 6 months ago. Marla Voss Day, listed as president and CEO. Harrison Day, listed as chairman emeritus, a title that meant nothing, a title given to a man who had been put out to pasture. Stapled to it was a copy of a share transfer, 90% of his private shares in Day Freight Line, transferred to the Voss Ridge Trust. Beneath that, a stack of bank statements from his personal checking account. I flipped through them. October 3rd, cash withdrawal, $10,000. October 7th, wire transfer, $30,000 to a Prospect Hearth LLC. October 19th, another cash withdrawal, $10,000. November 2nd, another wire transfer to Prospect Hearth, $20,000. I thought of Adele. He's been nodding off after dinner for the past month. These dates, these withdrawals, coincided with his foggy periods. Tucked in the back of the drawer, I found an invoice from St. Alders Hospital. It was a bill for a consultation with Dr. Archer Lane, the man who prescribed the sedatives. The date was September 1st. The service code was for a full neurological assessment and cognitive baseline test, a test that would have determined his mental fitness, his ability to sign documents, across the invoice, in red pen. Marla herself had written 2 words: "Cancelled by wife, reschedule pending." She had cancelled the one test that could have protected him. And then I saw it, a single sheet of paper, printed from a computer. It was a screenshot of a text message. The contact was Ron Voss, Marla's brother. The text was dated yesterday. "Marla, the investors are spooked. No more delays on the Oakmere Haven payment. You promised the funds by the 1st. Get it handled or we all go down." She was bleeding him dry, gutting his company and his personal accounts to fund her brother's failing real estate deal. I put the papers back, my heart a cold, hard knot in my chest. I turned to the pantry. I walked inside. The labels stared back at me. Alphabetical. Precise. Allspice. Basil. Cardamom. Cloves. I pulled the cloves jar. The small section of shelving swung open, silent on its hinges. The safe. I looked at the key in my hand. It was a small, brass, flathead key, a safe deposit key. I ignored the keypad. I slid the key into the lock just below it. It turned without a sound. The heavy steel door swung open. It wasn't full of cash. It was her archive, her leverage. The first thing I saw, sitting on top, was a thick, blue-backed document. It was folded, just like the one in my pocket. Last Will and Testament of Harrison Day. I opened it. It was dated 11 years ago, a year before my mother's death, when he was in full command of his health. My hands shook as I turned to the section on asset distribution, the house, the stocks, the Day Freight Line shares, all to be held in trust for me, managed by his executor, and then a separate article. To my beloved daughter, Trinity Day, I bequeath, free and clear of all encumbrances, the property known as Red Willow Creek Farm. Red Willow, the small farm my grandfather had built, the place I spent every summer, the place Marla had tried to get me to waive my rights to, not 30 minutes ago. This was my inheritance, the one thing my mother had made him promise. Beneath the will was a simple manila envelope, no label. I opened it. I dropped the envelope. The contents spilled onto the floor of the pantry. Photographs. They weren't family pictures. They were clinical, close-ups. It was my father's wrist, the one I had seen upstairs. The same circular bruises, angry and purple against his pale skin. But these photos were worse. They were clear, high resolution, and taken from multiple angles. They were undeniable. Stapled to the back of the last photo was a single sheet of paper, a typed report. Patient, Harrison Day. Visit. Date, October 28th. Notes. Private home nurse visit. Patient exhibited extreme lethargy and confusion, observed significant bruising on both wrists, consistent in shape and pattern with unauthorized physical restraints. When questioned, patient's wife, Mrs. Marla Voss, stated the patient had fallen and became verbally abusive. Mrs. Voss blocked further medical examination of the patient and terminated my service contract effective immediately, reporting this to agency for formal follow-up. She had kept trophies of her abuse. She had kept the report from the nurse she fired for discovering it. She was not just coercive, she was violent. At the very bottom of the safe, almost hidden in the back, was one more item, a single, black USB flash drive. It had a white label, printed from her ubiquitous label maker. 2 words. Staircase cam. The camera in the main hall, the one that pointed at the stairs, the one that saw everyone who went up to my father's room, the one that saw everyone who came down. I didn't think, I acted. My phone was already in my hand. I was a designer documenting a site. This was a demolition. I laid the documents on the white tile of the kitchen floor. The flash on my phone was brutally bright. Click, the Day Freight Line share transfer. Click, the bank statement with the $10,000 withdrawal. Click, the St. Alders invoice. Cancelled by wife. Click, the text message from Ron Voss. Get it handled or we all go down. I moved back to the safe. Click, the first page of my father's real will. Click, the article bequeathing Red Willow Farm to me. Click, the nurse's report. Every single line. Click, a close-up of the photograph of his bruised wrist. I photographed every single page. Then I put everything back. I refolded the will. I slid the photographs and the nurse's report back into the manila envelope. I placed them in the safe. I left the papers in the desk drawer exactly as I had found them. But the USB drive. I took the USB drive. It was small. It was concealable. It was the one thing she wouldn't check. She would check the papers, but she would forget about the digital archive. I closed the safe. I turned the key. I locked it. I pulled the key from the lock and slipped it deep into my pocket. Next to the postcard, I swung the spice rack shut. The cloves jar clicked back into its perfect alphabetical place. I stood in the dark kitchen. I had the video of the assault in the dining room. I had photographs of the financial documents. I had photographs of the will, the nurse's report, and the physical abuse, and I had the staircase camera footage in my hand. I turned to leave, and my heart stopped. Adele was standing in the doorway, a full black trash bag in her hand. She hadn't made a sound. We just looked at each other. Her eyes went from my face to the pantry and then to my coat. He used to be so good. Miss Trinity, she whispered, her voice rough with an emotion she had held back for years. Before her, he was a kind man. I know, Adele, I whispered back. I'm going to fix this. She nodded once, a quick, sharp acknowledgement. She moved aside, and I walked past her, out the interior garage door. I didn't look back. I got in my car. The USB drive clutched in my hand. I started the engine, backed out of the long driveway, and drove away from Voss Ridge, the house of my childhood, now a meticulously documented crime scene. I didn't drive far. I couldn't. The adrenaline was still coursing through me, a metallic taste in my mouth. I pulled into a dark, deserted strip mall 2 blocks from Voss Ridge, the tires crunching on broken pavement. I killed the engine. The silence of my car was absolute. My laptop was in my bag on the passenger seat. I pulled it out. My hands, which had been so steady, now trembling, I plugged the black USB drive, the one labeled staircase cam, into the side. The drive mounted, a single folder, a dozen video files, time-stamped, dated. I clicked on one from 3 days ago, November 21st. The video was grainy. From a high angle, looking down on the main staircase and a portion of the entryway, the sound was surprisingly clear. I saw my father, Harrison, standing at the bottom of the stairs, swaying slightly. Marla was in front of him, holding a piece of paper on a clipboard. "It's just your name, Harrison," Marla's voice said, sharp, impatient. "Just like we practiced. Look." She guided his hand. A pen clutched in his fingers. His hand shook so violently he dropped the pen. It clattered on the marble floor. From the side, I heard Sloane. A laugh. A short, bored, cruel snort. "God. Mother, it's like teaching a monkey. He can't even hold it." "Shut up, Sloane," Marla hissed. "He can hear you." She bent down, picked up the pen, and forced it back into his hand. Again, Harrison. From the top. "The H? Make the H. We have to get this right before the party. It has to look normal." My father made a low, frustrated sound as she physically moved his hand across the page, her fingers gripping his wrist in a way that was less guidance and more coercion. I clicked on another file. November 22nd, the day the lorazepam was prescribed. This time, he was sitting on the bottom step. He looked exhausted, his head bowed. Sloane was filming him with her phone. "Okay, Dad," Sloane said, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. "Mom is just going to give you your special tea that makes you feel better, and then we're going to practice signing your name for the family fund." I watched as Marla handed him a teacup. He sipped it, obediently. "Now," Marla said, waiting 5 full minutes. "Let's try again." She put the clipboard in his lap. He could barely lift the pen. "It's not working," Marla snapped, her voice no longer patient. "This is too slow. He's supposed to be compliant, not asleep. Sloane, go get the other ones, the as-needed ones, in my bathroom, the box behind the serum." Sloane disappeared. My father slumped, his head resting against the banister. I had seen enough. I closed the laptop. This wasn't just coercion. This was a systematic, premeditated plot. They had been rehearsing this for days, titrating his medication, practicing his signature until it was a blurred, useless scrawl that could be mistaken for a drugged, but willing, participant. My phone buzzed, a harsh, violent sound in the quiet car. It was Adele. I snatched it up. "Adele, are you okay?" "Miss Trinity," she whispered, her voice frantic, terrified. "You have to come back. You have to come back now. He's on the floor." My blood turned to ice. "What do you mean? He's on the floor?" After you left, she was screaming. She and Miss Sloane, they dragged him back to the table. She was trying to make him sign it, holding his hand, but he slid out of the chair. Miss Trinity, he's not moving, and he's making a sound, a bad sound." "Did you call 911? I was already starting the car, the engine roaring to life." "She won't let me. She took my phone. She said he's just overexcited and she's handling it, but he's not. Please." I slammed the car into drive, peeling out of the lot. "I'm calling them right now. Adele, I'm 2 minutes away. Hide if you have to. I'm on my way." I hung up and dialed 911. "Ambulance needed," I said, my voice high and tight as I ran a red light. "Voss Ridge, Harbor Glen. My father is unconscious. Suspected sedative overdose. His wife has been giving him unprescribed doses of lorazepam and is refusing to call for help." I gave the dispatcher the address. "I am his daughter. I am en route. I am almost there." I took the turn onto their street on 2 wheels. As I pulled up to the house, the red and white lights of an ambulance were already flashing, turning the corner right behind me. I jumped out of my car and ran to the front door. Just as 2 paramedics were pulling their bags from the truck, I pounded on the door. "Dad, open the door!" The door was ripped open. Marla stood there, her face a mask of disbelief and pure, undiluted hatred. Sloane was behind her, filming me. "She's trespassing," Marla shrieked at the paramedics who were running up the steps. "She's not welcome here. She did this. She came here and assaulted us and stressed him out. "She's the one who's been drugging him," I yelled, pushing past her. "He's in the dining room. He's unconscious." The paramedics, blessedly, ignored her and followed me. We found him. He was exactly where Adele said. He'd slid from his chair and was crumpled on the Persian rug. He was breathing, but it was a shallow, rattling gasp. Sir, can you hear me?" one paramedic said, already kneeling, checking his pupils. "He's been given lorazepam," I said, my voice a steel rod. "An unknown quantity. His prescription is for 0.5 milligrams as needed. His wife has been forcing him to take it all day. You need to check his levels." Marla grabbed my arm, her nails digging in. "You little bitch! You have ruined this family!" The second paramedic, a tall woman with a no-nonsense face, physically put her arm between us, pushing Marla back. "Ma'am, I need you to step away. You too," she said to Sloane, who was still filming the scene. "Put the phone down and let us work." They had him on a gurney in less than a minute. As they wheeled him out the front door, Marla was still screaming. "This is my husband. I am his wife. I'm coming with him." "Only one family member in the truck," the tall paramedic said. She looked from Marla's hysterical, shrieking face to my cold, calm one. She looked at the scratches on my hand. She pointed at me. You seem to know the medicals. You ride with us." "You can't do this," Marla shrieked. "I'll meet you at St. Alders," I said over my shoulder as I climbed into the back of the ambulance. The doors slammed shut, cutting off Marla's rage. The ride was a blur of beeping monitors and oxygen masks. I sat in the corner, my laptop bag at my feet, and I did not take my eyes off my father's gray, slack face. At the hospital, they rushed him into the emergency department. I was left in the waiting room, a sterile, fluorescent-lit hell. 20 minutes later, Marla and Sloane burst through the sliding doors. "Where is he?" Marla demanded of the triage nurse. "I am his wife. That woman," she pointed at me, her finger trembling, "is not to be given any information. She is a danger to him." "I'm his daughter," I said. Standing up, I walked calmly to the desk, my voice low and steady, a direct contrast to her hysteria. "My father was brought in for a suspected sedative overdose. His wife, Marla Voss, has been administering the medication. I am formally requesting that a toxicology screen be run for all benzodiazepines, and I am requesting that his wife's access to him be limited until a hospital social worker can perform a safety evaluation. She assaulted me tonight when I tried to stop her." I held up my hand, showing the 4 deep scratches from Sloane. The nurse's eyes widened. Marla lunged again. "She is lying. She is a destructive, jealous, horrible girl who is trying to destroy our family." "Ma'am, if you cannot be calm, I will have security remove you," the nurse said, her voice sharp. She looked at me. "A doctor will be out to speak with you both." Marla and Sloane sat across the room, a thundercloud of whispered fury. I sat down, pulled out my laptop, and connected to the hospital's public Wi-Fi. I opened my email. I created a secure cloud folder. I uploaded everything. The video from my phone of Marla forcing my father's hand, the staircase cam footage of the signing practice, the photos from the pantry, the will, the nurse's report, the text message from Ron Voss, the bank statements, the canceled neurology appointment. I wrote a new email to Nia Calder. Subject, Emergency, H, Day Asset Preservation, Evidence attached. "Nia, he collapsed. We are at St. Alders Emergency. Marla and Sloane are here. I have video of them rehearsing the signature and forcing him to take medication. I have proof of financial transfers to a Prospect Hearth LLC. I have a nurse's report from October detailing physical abuse and bruising. I have his original will, which leaves Red Willow to me. It's all in this folder. He is being tested for a sedative overdose. I need the emergency order. I need her blocked from seeing him. I need his assets frozen before she can drain them on Monday. Trinity." I hit send. An hour later, a doctor in blue scrubs came out. "Family of Harrison Day?" Marla and I both stood. "Your father," he looked at me, And your husband," he looked at Marla, "is stable. His breathing has been regulated. However, his toxicology screen came back. His levels of benzodiazepine are exceptionally high. They are not consistent with a therapeutic, as-needed dose. In fact, they are dangerously elevated. Given the nature of this, we are required by law to make a report to Adult Protective Services. A hospital social worker will be here in the morning to speak with all of you," and he added, "We will be limiting visitation to one person at a time." "I am his wife," Marla said, her voice low. "I will be the one visiting." "Actually," the doctor said, glancing at a note on his chart, "we've just received a call from your family's legal counsel. Ania Calder. She is faxing over an emergency petition for a temporary restraining order, citing elder abuse and medical endangerment. Until this is sorted out, no one is permitted to see him except for his designated daughter, Miss Day, who is not named in the petition." Marla's face crumpled. It was the most satisfying expression I had ever seen. "You cannot do this," she hissed. "Security," the doctor called over his shoulder. I left her there, explaining herself to two large men in uniforms, and I followed the doctor through the double doors. He was in a small, quiet room. The monitors beeped softly. The tremor in his hands was gone, but only because he was so deeply asleep. I sat in the chair by his bed. I signed the temporary asset preservation order that Nia had emailed directly to the hospital's administrative team, a document backed by the doctor's medical report. I sat there for 2 hours, just watching him breathe. Around 3 a.m, his eyelids fluttered. He turned his head. His eyes, cloudy and dim, found mine. "Trin," he whispered. His voice was a dry rasp. "I'm here, Dad," I said, taking his hand. It was cold. He squeezed my fingers. It was a weak, frail pressure, but it was there. You're like your mother," he breathed, the words a monumental effort. So strong. "I'm here. I'm not leaving." His eyes held mine. The fog was still there, but behind it, for the first time in years, I saw my father. "Don't," he whispered. "Don't let them take Red Willow." "They won't, Dad," I promised him, my throat thick. "I'm going to fix it." He nodded once, a tiny movement, and slipped back into sleep. I sat back, my promise hanging in the sterile air of the room. My phone buzzed on my lap. A new text message from an unknown number. "You don't know what you're doing. Don't touch the Haven deal. Walk away now, or you'll regret it." I took a screenshot, saved it, and forwarded it to Nia. I sat in that sterile, humming hospital room until dawn. The threatening text message on my phone was a declaration of war. They weren't just manipulative. They were organized, and they were scared. I forwarded the message to Nia with a single word: more. My father was sleeping, his breathing deep and natural for the first time in what felt like years. The sedatives were slowly working their way out of his system. The man in the bed was a stranger, pale and gaunt, but the fear was gone from his face. At 7 a.m., Nia Calder walked in. She wasn't dressed in a suit. She wore jeans, a black turtleneck, and a leather jacket, looking more like a commando than a lawyer. She was carrying a briefcase in one hand and 2 large coffees in the other. "You look like hell. Trin," she said, handing me a coffee. It was scalding hot and strong. "You look like you're ready to burn something to the ground," I replied, taking a sip. "That's the plan," she said, pulling a chair up. She didn't waste time. "I've reviewed everything, the videos, the financials, the nurse's report, the text from Ron Voss. It's not just elder abuse. It's a conspiracy to commit fraud. It's a clean case. But Marla is going to fight ugly. So, we'll be surgical. We are launching a 3-pronged attack: medical, civil, and financial. We will dismantle her entire operation, piece by piece." She set her briefcase on the small table and opened it. "First, medical. This is our foundation. The hospital's report of a toxic level of sedatives is our entry point. But Marla's defense will be that you stressed him out, that you caused his anxiety, and she was just trying to calm him down. She'll say the high dose was an accident, a single mistake. The staircase cam video proves that's a lie, I said. They were practicing, drugging him systematically. Exactly. But we need to formalize it. We can't have her doctor, Archer Lane, anywhere near this. He's compromised. He prescribed the weapon. I'm filing a petition this morning to have an independent geriatric psychiatrist evaluate Harrison's competency. I'm bringing in the best, Dr. Imani Vale. She's a forensic specialist. Impossible to rattle in court. And she literally wrote the book on medical elder abuse. Our goal? Get Dr. Vale to declare him incompetent during the period he was being drugged, but fully competent once he is clean. This bifurcated finding is key. It invalidates everything he signed, and it validates your position as his protector. I nodded, the caffeine and the clarity of the plan cutting through my exhaustion. Okay, medical. Get Dr. Vale. Second, civil, Naya continued, her voice sharp. We need to protect the evidence and the witnesses. That means Marla. The hospital's temporary access ban is a good start, but it's not enough. This morning, I'm filing for an ex parte temporary restraining order. We'll use the video of Sloan assaulting you, the threats from Marla, and the nurse's report of physical bruising. We are painting her as a violent, immediate threat to his physical safety. The order will forbid her from contacting Harrison, you, or any key witnesses. And that brings me to Adele. Adele gave me the key. Nia, she's terrified. Marla will fire her the second she finds out. Which is why we're moving first. I have a paralegal driving to Adele's house right now with a prepared affidavit. It outlines everything she told you. Marla controlling the medication, the special tea, Harrison nodding off for a month, her taking Adele's phone during the 911 call. Adele needs to sign it, get it notarized, and then she needs to disappear for a few days. Go to her sister's, a friend's, anywhere but Vossridge. That affidavit becomes our sworn testimony, locked in before Marla can threaten her into silence. And the house? I asked. Vossridge? The safe? The other documents? That's where Adult Protective Services comes in. The hospital's report triggered their file. I've already spoken with the case manager. I sent them the nurse's report and the photos of the bruises. They are scheduling a full inspection of the Vossridge property for tomorrow morning. They will be accompanied by a police officer. They will document the pharmacy bottles, the layout of the house, and they will formally interview Marla. We are building the official, third-party paper trail. Good. What's the third prong? Financial, Naya said, a grim smile touching her lips. This is the one that brings them down. This is the motive. The threatening text you got? Don't touch the Haven deal. That's Ron Voss, Marla's brother. He's panicking. Their entire plan hinged on that wire transfer last night. The Prospect Hearth LLC he was texting about, I said. I saw 2 wire transfers to it from Dad's account in October, $50,000 total. And I'm betting that's just the start, Naya said. She got his signing authority on Day Freightline in June. We need to see how deep the rot goes. I'm filing an immediate motion to freeze all assets of the Vossridge Trust. Pending a full forensic accounting, we'll claim the trust was funded with assets transferred under duress. But to do that, we need to connect Marla to Prospect Hearth and the notary. She pulled out a legal pad. Which brings me to Mr. Keats. Mr. Keats? He was my dad's accountant for forever. Since before I was born. Marla fired him about a year ago. Exactly. She fired him because he knew where all the bodies were buried. I called him at 6 this morning. He was, let's just say, eager to help. He remembers Marla's arrival clearly. He told me that in the 6 months after she got signing authority and before he was fired, she made a series of highly unusual consulting fee payments from the Day Freightline corporate account. He didn't know to who. He just knew they were off book and went to a shell. Prospect Hearth, I whispered. Bingo. And it gets better. Mrs. Archer Klein. The notary. The doctor's wife. She's not just a friend. I ran a quick property search. Mrs. Klein was the closing agent and notary on Marla's purchase of the Vossridge house. That's how they met. But here's the kicker. I cross-referenced her business with the state corporate filings. Prospect Hearth LLC? The articles of incorporation were filed by Ron Voss, and the registered agent address is Mrs. Klein's notary office. She's not just a witness. She's a co-conspirator. She's the financial hub. So the money, Dad's money, it's going from Day Freight Line through Prospect Hearth to Oakmere Haven, her brother's deal. And I'm betting a fat processing fee is landing right in Mrs. Klein's pocket for her trouble. Nia finished. By freezing the Voss Ridge Trust, we stop the bleeding. By connecting the notary to the shell company, we invalidate the entire chain of command. We prove it was a coordinated conspiracy. The plan was beautiful. It was a perfect piece of design. Every part had a function. Every connection was load-bearing. The next 48 hours were a blur of motion. Nia filed the motions, a judge, seeing the video of my father slurring, the toxicology report, and the nurse's affidavit, granted the emergency restraining order and the asset freeze immediately. Marla was legally barred from the hospital, from the house, and from contacting any of us. Dr. Imani Vale, a tall, elegant woman with a mind like a steel trap, arrived. She spent 3 hours with my father, who was now off the sedative drip and slowly returning to himself. He was weak, confused, and ashamed, but his mind was, as Dr. Vale put it, a clear sky behind a chemical fog. Adele's affidavit was signed, notarized, and filed with the court. She was safely with her family in the next state. Mr. Keats met with Nia's forensic accountant, his old, meticulously kept ledgers telling a story of small, strange withdrawals that, after Marla's arrival, became a torrent. The APS visit to Voss Ridge, I was told, was a masterpiece of theater. Marla, served with the TRO by a sheriff's deputy on her own doorstep, apparently flew into a rage, accusing the caseworker of being on my daughter's payroll. Her performance only helped our case. The only wild card was Sloane. Blocked from the hospital and the house, she went to the one place she had any power, the internet. My phone started blowing up with notifications. My friends, colleagues, even my boss at Northlight. Trinity, have you seen this? Sloane had posted a video. It was 20 minutes long, expertly edited, with soft, sad music playing in the background. It was her, in close-up, tears streaming down her face. I don't know what to do, she wept into the camera. My mother is the kindest woman in the world, and my stepsister, Trinity. She's trying to destroy her. She's trying to steal my father's money. She forced her way into our Thanksgiving. She assaulted my mother, and now she's had her banned from her own home. She's holding my father hostage in the hospital, and we just want to know if he's okay. It was brilliant. She was painting me as the cold, calculating, money-grubbing daughter, and Marla as the victim. The comments were a predictable cesspool. Trinity Day is a monster. How can a daughter do this? Praying for Marla. I watched it once, my stomach churning. Nia called me. Don't respond, she ordered. Don't comment. Don't post. Don't do anything. Let her scream into the void. She's creating a public record of her narrative. A narrative that we are going to dismantle in court with facts. Save the video. Save the comments. It's just more evidence of the family's coordinated campaign of manipulation. Let her dig her own grave. So I did. I saved the video. I took screenshots of the most vicious comments, and I went back to my father's hospital room, where he was sitting up in bed, slowly, painfully, relearning how to hold a pen. The Bellwater County Courthouse was a severe gray building, smelling of old paper and floor wax. It was not a grand trial, but an emergency hearing for the temporary orders, held in a small, cramped courtroom on the 3rd floor. It was Monday, the day after the wire transfer Marla had missed. The air was thick with a prefabricated animosity. I sat next to Naya. I wore the simplest, sharpest black suit I owned. I was a designer. I understood the power of presentation. I was clean, precise, and professional. Marla and Sloane were on the other side, a tableau of coordinated grief. They were both in muted, expensive-looking gray cashmere. Marla had a lawyer I didn't recognize, a sharp man with a thin mustache and restless, darting eyes. Sloane was not on her phone. She was sitting with her hands clasped, staring at the judge's bench, the picture of a worried daughter. The judge, a woman named Lila Rivas, entered. She had a face that looked like she'd heard every lie ever invented. "We are here on the petition for a temporary restraining order and temporary guardianship regarding Harrison Day," Judge Rivas announced, her voice flat. "Counsel for the petitioner, Ms. Calder, you may begin." Nia stood. She was a column of calm, dark steel. "Your Honor, we are here because of a medical emergency created by a financial motive. On the evening of Thanksgiving, November 24th, my client, Trinity Day, witnessed the respondent, Mrs. Marla Voss, attempt to coerce her father, Harrison Day, into signing a durable power of attorney and an irrevocable transfer of shares. Marla's lawyer, Mr. Vance, shot to his feet. Objection. Coerce is a conclusion. Sustained. Stick to the facts. Ms. Calder, the judge said, already looking bored. The facts, Your Honor, Nia continued, unfazed, are that Mr. Day was medically incapacitated at the time. We have submitted the toxicology report from St. Alder's Hospital, which shows exceptionally high levels of benzodiazepines in his system, consistent with a severe non-therapeutic overdose. We have also submitted, as Exhibit A, a video taken by my client at 6:30 p.m. on that night, showing Mr. Day unable to speak, unable to hold his head up, while Mrs. Voss and her notary, Mrs. Archer Klein, attempted to physically force his hand to sign the document. Nia turned to the small monitor facing the bench. With the court's permission, I would also like to play Exhibit B. This is video recovered from the home's internal security system, dated November 21st, 3 days before the incident. Vance objected. Relevance? This is outside the scope of the Thanksgiving event. It goes directly to premeditation and a pattern of coercive behavior, Your Honor, Nia countered. I'll allow it, the judge said, leaning forward. Nia hit play. The courtroom was filled with the grainy, high-angle footage from the staircase. We heard Marla's voice, sharp and impatient. Again, Harrison, the H, make the H. We have to get this right before the party. We heard Sloane's laugh. God, Mother, it's like teaching a monkey. Marla, I saw, winced. Her lawyer stared straight ahead, his jaw tight. Nia stopped the video. A pattern, Your Honor, not a mistake, a rehearsal. The judge looked at Marla, her expression hardening. Mr. Vance, your response. Vance stood, smoothed his tie, and then gestured to Marla. Marla stood, her movements fragile, her hand going to her throat. She looked like a dove about to strike. Your Honor, Marla began, her voice breaking, carefully modulated. This is the most painful thing I have ever endured. She dabbed her eye with a tissue. Sloane, on cue, put a supportive arm around her mother's back. My husband, Harrison, has never been the same since his first wife, Trinity's mother, passed away. He suffers from a profound, crippling depression. He has good days and bad days. I am his sole caretaker. I manage his medicine. I manage his life. And that medicine, Mrs. Voss? Nia asked, her voice cutting in. It's for his anxiety, Marla cried, turning on her. Anxiety you and your client caused. Trinity, my stepdaughter. She has always been difficult. She is cold. She is distant. She resents me. She resents my closeness with her father. She came to our home on Thanksgiving, a home she has avoided for years, and she attacked me. She created a scene. She upset Harrison until his hands were shaking so badly. I may have given him an extra half a pill, to calm him, because she was terrorizing him. I was trying to protect my husband from her, and she has twisted it into this horrible, greedy lie. She collapsed into her chair, sobbing into her tissue. Sloane glared at me, whispering, "Monster," just loud enough for the court reporter to hear. It was a good performance. It was layered. It painted me as the greedy, absent daughter and her as the overwhelmed, loving wife, protecting her depressed, fragile husband. Nia waited for the sobs to subside. "Your Honor," Nia said, "Mrs. Voss has opened the door regarding Mr. Day's medical condition. I would like to call our first witness, Dr. Imani Vale." Dr. Vale was sworn in. She was the definition of authority. "Doctor," Nia began, "you are a forensic psychiatrist specializing in geriatric capacity?" "I am." "And you were retained by my client to perform an independent evaluation of Harrison Day?" I evaluated him twice, once on November 28th, 4 days after the overdose, and again yesterday, December 1st. He is currently at a private rehabilitation facility, under medical supervision, and is no longer on any benzodiazepines prescribed by Dr. Lane. What were your findings?" "On Thanksgiving," Dr. Vale said, "based on the toxicology report from St. Alders and the video evidence I reviewed, Mr. Day was profoundly incapacitated. He was incapable of understanding, let alone consenting to, a complex financial document. He was not lucid. He had no legal capacity, period." Vance stood. "But you said he's depressed. My client, Mrs. Voss, stated he is often confused." "That is where the distinction is critical," Dr. Vale said, turning her cool gaze on Vance. "Mr. Day suffers from what we call fluctuating impairment, exacerbated by grief, yes, but caused by a systematic, non-therapeutic administration of sedatives. When I interviewed him yesterday, with his system clean, his mind was sharp, he was articulate, he understood his finances, he understood the nature of a power of attorney. He was, in my medical opinion, fully lucid and competent. The man I interviewed is not the man in that video. The man in that video was a victim of a chemical restraint." The word restraint hung in the air. The judge wrote it down. "Thank you, doctor," Nia said. "Next, I call Mr. Arthur Keats." Mr. Keats, my father's old accountant, was pale and nervous, but his voice was steady. Nia didn't ask him about Marla. She asked him about dates. "Mr. Keats, you have reviewed Mr. Day's personal bank statements for the last quarter?" "I have." "Do you see a cash withdrawal for $10,000 on October 3rd? "Yes, ma'am." "And another for $10,000 on October 19th? "Yes." "And a wire transfer to a Prospect Hearth LLC for $30,000 on October 7th? "Yes." "Are these transactions consistent with Mr. Day's spending habits over the 20 years you worked for him?" "Absolutely not," Keats said, shaking his head. "Mr. Day never carried that much cash. He was frugal, and I had never heard of Prospect Hearth until you showed me this." "Thank you. Now, Your Honor, I would like to cross-reference these dates with the sworn affidavit of Adele Nunez, the family's housekeeper, who stated that these exact weeks in October were when Mr. Day's foggy periods began, and when Mrs. Voss began giving him her special tea every night." The judge nodded, her expression grim. "The connection is noted." "Finally," Nia said, "I call Mrs. Archer Klein to the stand." The notary looked like she was walking to her own execution. Her face was ashen. Nia was gentle, at first. "Mrs. Klein, you are a commissioned notary public for the state?" "Yes." "And you were present at the Voss Day residence on Thanksgiving?" "Yes, as a guest." "As a guest? Who brought her notary stamp and a leather briefcase?" Marla asked me to, just in case, as a favor." "A favor. Were you paid for this favor, Mrs. Klein?" "No, absolutely not. It was for a friend." "I see. Then perhaps you can explain the $5,500 filing fee paid to your business. A. Klein Notary Services, from Prospect Hearth LLC on November 15th? Mrs. Klein turned a shade of gray I had only ever seen on concrete. Vance was on his feet. "Objection. This is a fishing expedition. What does this have to do with the restraining order? It has everything to do with it, Your Honor, Naya countered, her voice ringing. It proves conspiracy. The notary, the shell company, and the wife were all working together. This wasn't a family matter. It was a financial execution, and Mrs. Klein was the paid officiant. The judge's gavel slammed down. Silence, both of you. Ms. Calder, that's a very serious allegation. Mrs. Klein, answer the question. I do consulting, Mrs. Klein stammered. Prospect Hearth is a client. It has nothing to do with Harrison Day. Then let's return to Thanksgiving, Naya said, moving in. When you, as a notary, prepare to witness a signature, what is your legal obligation? To confirm the identity of the signer and ensure they are signing of their own free will, and that they have the capacity to understand what they are signing, correct? Yes. And in the video, Exhibit A, when my client's father was slurring his words, when his head was lolling, when his wife was physically holding his hand to make a mark, did you, as a notary, determine that he had capacity? Mrs. Klein looked at Marla. She looked at the judge. She licked her lips. He has bad days, she whispered. Marla said he was just tired, that he had approved it all before, that he wanted this. That is not what I asked, Mrs. Klein, Naya said, her voice dropping, lethal and quiet. Did you ascertain his capacity? I was attempting to, when Miss Day interrupted us. So you were going to notarize the signature of an unconscious man. Objection, Vance yelled. Sustained. Rephrase, Ms. Calder. Did you, at any point, say, stop, this man is incapacitated. I cannot legally witness this signature? A long, agonizing silence. No, Mrs. Klein whispered. Thank you, Nia said. I have nothing further. Judge Rivas looked at all of us. She took off her glasses. I have heard enough, she said. The evidence is clear and deeply disturbing. The toxicology report, corroborated by the video evidence and the financial timeline, paints a picture not of a loving wife, but of a calculating fiduciary predator. Marla let out a small, strangled gasp. The temporary restraining order is granted in full. Marla Voss is to have no contact, direct or indirect, with Harrison Day or Trinity Day. The powers of attorney dated June 10th and the attempted transfer on November 24th are hereby suspended, pending a full competency hearing. I am appointing Miss Trinity Day as temporary guardian, with full authority over her father's medical and personal decisions, and as conservator, to protect his assets from further depletion. We will reconvene in 90 days. She slammed the gavel. It was over, for now. We stood. I felt hollow. Not triumphant, just hollow. Marla's lawyer was already stuffing papers into his briefcase. Marla, however, was not moving. She was staring at me, her face white, her eyes no longer performing. They were pits of pure black rage. As we filed out into the hallway, she moved. She pushed past her lawyer and got in my path. A sheriff's deputy tensed, but she didn't touch me. She just stood, vibrating with hatred. You think you've won, she whispered, her voice a low hiss. You think you're smart. You think you can just take him back. But don't you dare dream of keeping Red Willow. It's mine. It was always mine. I'll burn it to the ground before I let you have it. Marla, her lawyer said, grabbing her arm. Not here, not now. Stay away from me, Marla, I said, my voice cold. The order is in effect. She laughed, a short, ugly sound, before her lawyer pulled her away. Ms. Calder? Vance's voice was suddenly smooth. He had caught up with us by the elevator. My client is emotional. This has been a shock. She is, at her heart, a pragmatist. I've been authorized to extend an offer, to make this all go away, quietly, for the good of the family. What's the offer? Vance? Naya asked, not even looking at him. Mrs. Voss will agree to the guardianship on a permanent basis. She will agree to a legal separation. She wants no further contact. In exchange, she retains the Vossridge property, her personal accounts, and a one-time lump sum payment of $5 million. He was offering to sell my father back to me. $5 million? I said, looking at him. She believes it's a fair settlement for her years of care, he said, smiling his thin mustached smile. I looked at Nia. Nia looked at me. Mr. Vance, Nia said, as the elevator doors opened. My client's response is, and I quote, "Go to hell. We will see you at the competency hearing, and we will be filing a separate civil suit for the recovery of all funds transferred to Prospect Hearth, and a criminal complaint with the district attorney's office regarding the notary. Have a nice day." We stepped into the elevator, leaving him standing there. The next day, the Silverford Ledger ran a small, neutral story on page B4. Day Freightline founder at center of family asset dispute. It mentioned the hearing, the TRO, and the competing claims. It was just noise. I ignored it. I had work to do. That afternoon, I drove not to my loft, but to the rehabilitation facility Dr. Vale had recommended. It was quiet, full of light and warm wood. I found my father in a small sunroom, overlooking a garden. He was sitting at a table. He was clean-shaven, wearing a soft blue sweater. He was alone. In front of him was a bowl of soup. I stood in the doorway and watched. He picked up the spoon. His hand was not shaking. It was slow, and it was deliberate, but it was steady. He lifted the spoon to his mouth, ate, and then set it back down. He looked out the window at the garden. He was calm. He was safe. For the first time in a decade, he was eating a meal in peace. He wasn't being coached, or belittled, or drugged. He was just there. He must have sensed me. He turned his head and saw me. A slow, tired, but genuine smile spread across his face. "Trin," he said. His voice was quiet, but it was his. "Hi, Dad," I said, my throat aching. "I'm here." I walked in and sat down across from him. He watched me, his eyes clear. He picked up his spoon again. "It's good soup," he said. "The temporary restraining order bought us time. The asset freeze bought us security. But Marla's threat in the hallway, 'I'll burn it to the ground before I let you have it,' wasn't a cry of defeat. It was a promise. We had stopped the bleeding, but we hadn't cured the disease. My father was settling into the rehabilitation facility. He was, as Dr. Vale had predicted, emerging from the chemical fog. His tremor was gone. His voice was stronger. But he was also angry and deeply ashamed. "I let her," he'd whispered to me during one visit, staring at his own steady hands. I knew, Trin, somewhere inside, I knew she was confusing me, but it was just easier to sleep, easier than fighting her. "You don't have to fight her anymore, Dad," I told him. "That's my job now." Nia and I began to build the full picture, moving from defense to offense. The 90-day window before the final competency hearing was not a vacation. It was a deadline. The information began to escalate, the puzzle pieces clicking into place with a speed that was sickening. The first piece came from Adele. She was still safely with her sister, but she had been busy. She sent Nia an email. "I found this when I was packing my things. I thought it might be important." It was a series of scanned pages from a leather-bound day planner, Marla's planner. It was her entire social and chemical schedule, laid out in her precise, looping cursive. Nia and I stared at the scans on her laptop. "October 3rd, Nia read aloud, her finger tracing the line. "Harrison agitated, Keats visiting, evening, special tea, double dose." She cross-referenced the date. "That's the day of the first $10,000 cash withdrawal." "Look at this one," I said, pointing. "November 15th, investor call, Oakmere Haven, 8 p.m., and right below it, H. Day 1 milligram lorazepam, 7:30 p.m. She drugged him into silence for a business call. And then, the final week, November 21st, signature practice, 0.5 milligrams midday, November 22nd, Call with A. Klein. Confirm timing. November 23rd. Practice signature. Marla. November 24th. Thanksgiving. H. Day. 1 milligram. 10 a.m. H. Day. 1 milligram. 4 p.m. Pre-dinner. She wasn't just giving him extra pills, Naya said, her voice hard. She was titrating him. She was running a clinical trial in her own home. This is premeditated. Systematic poisoning. This is our mens rea. The next piece came from Mr. Keats. He'd been digging into the Day Freight Line accounts, specifically the consulting fees Marla had paid out. But he found something bigger. It's the car. Trinity, he said over the phone, his voice thin with outrage. Your father's Mercedes, the 1957 300 SL. I remembered that car. It was my father's one true indulgence, a gleaming silver sculpture he kept in a climate-controlled garage. What about it? I asked. She sold it. 6 weeks ago. The wire transfer was for $450,000. It went directly to Prospect Hearth LLC and Trinity. I got a copy of the bill of sale from the broker. The signature. It's not his. It's a forgery. A good one. But it's not his fluid loop. It's the shaky, practiced one from the videos. Nia's team confirmed it within an hour. Prospect Hearth LLC, the shell company that received my father's money and paid the notary, was registered to one man, Ron Voss, Marla's brother. The stated purpose of the LLC, filed with the state? Property development and mortgage application processing. They weren't just stealing his cash, Naya said, pacing her office. They were building a case. They were going to use the fraudulent financials and the power of attorney to apply for a massive mortgage against an unsecured asset, and the only major unsecured asset your father has left. Red Willow, I finished. Marla's threat. She wasn't going to burn it. She was going to leverage it. She was going to make my inheritance pay for her brother's bad deal. We had the medical proof. We had the financial motive. We had the conspiracy. We had a case that would not only make the guardianship permanent, but would likely lead to criminal charges. And then, the double twist. I was at my loft, trying to catch up on a week of missed work, when my phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. I need to see you, alone. Don't tell your lawyer. S. Sloan. We met at a sterile, 24-hour coffee shop in a part of Silverford I never visited. She was huddled in a booth, wearing a baseball cap and sunglasses. Despite it being 9 o'clock at night, she looked terrible. The confident, sneering lifestyle blogger was gone. In her place was a pale, terrified girl. What do you want, Sloan? I said, not sitting down. A deal, she whispered, her eyes darting around the empty cafe. I don't make deals. I'm not you. You don't understand, she hissed, pulling off the sunglasses. Her eyes were red-rimmed. She's insane. My mother, she's not just angry. She's liquidating. She's moving money to offshore accounts, trying to bypass your asset freeze. She's going to run, and she's going to try to pin this all on Ron, or me, or that stupid notary. Sounds like a you problem, I said, turning to leave. She's going to destroy the evidence, Sloan said, her voice cracking. And I'm tied to it. I want immunity. Immunity from what? From the financial stuff. I just posted the videos she told me to post. I just filmed what she told me to film. I didn't know. Not really. You laughed. Sloan, I heard the video. You laughed when he dropped the pen. She flinched, as if I'd slapped her. I know, okay? I know, but I am not going to jail for her. She's a monster. She slid a napkin across the table. I'll give you everything. Just tell your lawyer to make me a witness, not a defendant. Tell them I cooperated. What's everything? The Haven deal, she said, her voice dropping. The old, calculating Sloan resurfacing for a moment. It's a good deal. It's solid. It's just, Ron's an idiot. He mismanaged the funds. It can be saved. I want a stake, a small one, for my cooperation. I stared at her. She was negotiating. After everything, she was her mother's daughter. You're unbelievable, I said. What's on the napkin? Her iCloud. The password. It's all there. Everything she's been hiding. Her photos, her notes, her other documents. Just get me out of this. Trinity, please. I took the napkin. Nia and I were in her office until 3 a.m. Logging into Marla's iCloud was like opening the door to a serial killer's basement. It was all there. Trinity, look at this, Nia said. Her voice hushed. She'd opened a folder in Marla's files labeled Contingency. It was a PDF, a will, entitled Last Will and Testament of Harrison Day. It was dated Thanksgiving Day. This, Nia whispered, is what the notary was really there for. The power of attorney was just the appetizer. This was the main course. The document was a complete forgery. It revoked all previous wills, including the one in the safe that left me Red Willow. This new one transferred every single asset, Day Freight Line, the Vossridge house, the bank accounts, and specifically, all rights and titles to Red Willow Creek Farm, into the Vossridge Trust, with Marla Voss as the sole, unchallengeable trustee and Sloan as her successor. This was the document she was forcing his hand onto. She wasn't just trying to get control, I said, my voice shaking. She was trying to erase me, to erase my mother's legacy completely. It gets worse, Nia said, clicking into a hidden photo album. The album was full of pictures of signatures, my father's bold, looping signature from old letters. Next to page after page of her practicing, she had been tracing it, then faking it. Some were shaky, some were close. She had been perfecting her forgery, the one she'd used to sell his car. Then, a video, dated the night before Thanksgiving. It was Marla, in the dining room, with the photographer. Sloan was filming on her phone. No, Marla was saying, posing, one hand on the back of an empty chair. The lighting is too harsh. I need to look grateful, concerned, but in control. David, when I lean in to kiss Harrison's temple, that's when I want the flash to pop. It needs to look like a private, candid moment of connection. Sloan, make sure no one is in the background. She had rehearsed the slap. She had rehearsed the moment of connection that I had interrupted. The entire evening was a piece of theater, staged to build her narrative as a loving wife. And finally, the texts, a thread between Marla and Mrs. Klein, the notary. Marla, he's fighting the new dose. He's too sleepy. I can't get a clean signature. He just drops the pen. Klein, it doesn't matter if it's clean. It just needs to be a mark. Get his hand to make a mark on the signature line. I can attest to the rest. That's what the fee is for. Just get him on the line. We had it, all of it. The medical plot, the financial plot, the forgery, the conspiracy with the notary, the premeditation. The final piece of the puzzle came from Dr. Vale. She submitted her final report for the court, and it included a visual exhibit that was devastating. It was a simple, side-by-side comparison chart, prepared for a jury. Column 1. Signature, H. Day, Lucid 2017. It was the postcard I had found, bold, confident, strong. Column 2. Signature H. Day, drugged. Nov 22. The shaky, spidery grocery list. Column 3. Signature M. Voss, practice. Novi 23. A photo from the iCloud, showing her attempt at his signature. Column 4. Signature, forged. October 15. The bill of sale for the Mercedes. Her medical opinion was stark. The signatures from October and November are inconsistent with Mr. Day's established motor control and are consistent with either a hand being physically forced or a forgery attempting to mimic a tremor. They bear no resemblance to his lucid signature. He lacked all capacity. Nia leaned back in her chair as the sun began to rise, illuminating the skyline of Silverford. This is no longer a 90-day competency hearing. Trin, she said, her voice quiet, but with a hard, sharp edge. This is a criminal case. We have felony elder abuse, conspiracy to commit fraud, forgery, and a public notary who suborned perjury for cash. She closed the laptop. Vance's $5 million offer wasn't a settlement, Nia said. It was an attempt to obstruct a felony investigation. I'm filing for summary judgment on the civil side. We have an avalanche of undisputed fact, and I'm taking this entire package. Adele's notebook, Keats's financial trail, Sloane's iCloud evidence, and Dr. Vale's signature chart, and I'm walking it over to the district attorney's office. We're not asking for guardianship anymore. We're demanding an indictment. The main hearing was not set for 90 days. It was fast-tracked by the district attorney's office. The moment the state's prosecutor, a formidable woman named Julia Brandt, got her hands on Nia's file, the case was elevated. This was no longer just a civil guardianship dispute. It was a criminal conspiracy. The courtroom was packed. Sloane's social media campaign had backfired, turning the hearing into a local media spectacle. She sat in the back, separate from everyone, her face pale, a witness for the state, not a grieving daughter. Marla was there, in her armor of expensive wool, next to her lawyer, Vance. He looked strained. This was no longer a simple shakedown. Ron Voss, her brother, was present, his face slick with sweat. Mrs. Archer Klein, the notary, sat 3 rows behind him, trying to look invisible. My father was not there. Dr. Vale had declared him competent but medically unfit to endure the stress of the trial. I sat in the front row, next to Nia. I was his proxy. I was the evidence. Vance's strategy was desperation. He tried to paint Marla as the victim of a sophisticated, vengeful plot. Your Honor, Vance argued, his voice smooth. My client, Mrs. Voss, was acting only out of love. This entire narrative has been spun by an estranged daughter, angry about being cut out. We have proof that Mr. Day intended these changes. We have a letter. He produced a sealed plastic bag. Inside was a handwritten note. This is a letter from Harrison Day to my client, dated November 1st, just 3 weeks before the incident. It states, and I quote, Marla, my love, I'm so tired. You handle everything. Red Willow, the company, it's all yours now. You deserve it. I trust you. He placed it on the dais. This was not a conspiracy, Your Honor. This was a man's dying wish, which his daughter is trying to subvert. Marla dabbed her eyes. The judge read the letter. She looked at Nia. Ms. Calder? Nia stood. She didn't look at the letter. She looked at the jury box, even though there was no jury. Your Honor, that letter is a beautiful piece of fiction, and we can prove it. We would like to play, simultaneously, 3 exhibits for the court. Exhibit A, the toxicology report from November 24th. Exhibit B, the staircase cam footage from November 21st. And Exhibit C, a photo from Mrs. Voss's own iCloud, dated November 1st, the same day as that letter. The large monitors in the courtroom lit up. On the left, the toxicology report, with the dangerously elevated levels of lorazepam highlighted in red. In the middle, the grainy video of Marla forcing my father's hand. Make the H, we have to get this right. And on the right, the photo from her iCloud. It was a close-up of a piece of paper. On it were 20 different practice signatures of my father's name, and above them, the words, Red Willow, it's all yours. I trust you, written over and over, in Marla's looping cursive, trying to mimic his shaking scrawl. The courtroom was silent. Vance stared at the screen, his face ashen. He had been played by his own client. What you see, Your Honor, Nia said, her voice cutting through the silence, is not a man's dying wish. You see the rough draft, you see the rehearsal, and you see the chemical weapon she used to try and make it a reality. She didn't just forge his words, she was forging his tremor. Before Vance could even object, Prosecutor Julia Brandt stood. Your Honor, if I may, The state of Silverford would like to formally address an item brought to light by this investigation. The judge nodded. Brant turned to look, not at Marla, but at Mrs. Archer Klein. The state is charging Mrs. Archer Klein with 4 counts of felony notary fraud and 1 count of conspiracy. The notary's seal is an arm of the state, meant to protect the public. Mrs. Klein used that seal as a weapon for hire, accepting a $5,500 bribe to legitimize a fraudulent document, fully aware that the signer was incapacitated. She did not just fail in her duty, she actively participated in the financial abuse of a vulnerable adult. The air left the room. This was real. 2 uniformed bailiffs moved from the wall to stand at the end of the notary's row. Mrs. Klein let out a small, terrified squeak. "The state calls Sloane Voss to the stand," Brant said. Sloane walked up, her steps unsteady. She was under oath. She had her immunity deal, but only if she told the truth, and she did. "Your mother, she told you to film the moment of connection at Thanksgiving?" Brant asked. "Yes," Sloane whispered. "She said we needed to establish a public narrative of her being a loving wife, in case Trinity caused a problem." "And the video you posted online? The one where you accuse Miss Day of being a monster?" Sloane looked at me, her eyes dead. "My mother wrote the script. She told me to cry. She said it would poison the jury pool and discredit Trinity. She said I had to pick a side, her side." "And the immunity deal you struck with my office, in exchange for the iCloud password?" "Yes." "What did you ask for, in exchange for your testimony?" Sloane hesitated, her mask of victimhood slipping. I asked for a 10% stake in the Oakmere Haven deal, once it was restructured. She was her mother's daughter, right to the end. She was dismissed. Brant called Adele. Adele was no longer a frightened whisper. She was dressed in her Sunday best, her voice clear and strong. She identified Marla. She confirmed the special tea. She confirmed the schedule from the planner. "And this," Brant said, displaying the high-resolution photo from the safe. "Exhibit D, the bruising. Did you see these marks on Mr. Day?" "I did," Adele said, her voice shaking with a sudden, righteous anger. "After Mrs. Voss would have her private meetings with him to sign business papers, he would be asleep, and he would have these marks. I took the picture. I couldn't let it be erased. He was a good man. He didn't deserve that." Next, Mr. Keats. He was the final nail. He calmly, clinically, walked the court through the entire financial timeline. "The share transfer of Day Freight Line in June," he said, pointing to a complex flowchart. "The sale of the 1957 Mercedes in October. The $50,000 in cash withdrawals. Every single dollar was funneled here. To Prospect Hearth LLC. And Prospect Hearth, in turn, made 2 payments. One, the $5,500 consulting fee to Mrs. Klein, and the other, a $1.2 million down payment to the Oakmere Haven developers. All of it, originating from Mr. Day's assets, authorized by a signature that was not his." He pointed to Ron Voss, who seemed to shrink in his seat. Finally, Dr. Amani Vale. She concluded her testimony with the side-by-side signature chart. "It is my expert medical opinion," she stated, her voice ringing with absolute authority, "that any document, letter, or check signed by Harrison Day after June 1st of this year, when this pattern of medication and abuse began, is invalid. He was a prisoner in his own home, chemically restrained and systematically coerced. He did not have the capacity to sell a car, transfer a company, or sign away his will. He did not, in any legal or medical sense, act of his own free will." The closing arguments were short. Vance had nothing. Naya and Brant simply rested on the evidence. The judge returned after only 20 minutes. "This court," Judge Rivas said, her voice a cold, sharp instrument, "finds that a conspiracy of abuse and fraud has been proven beyond a shadow of a doubt. The evidence is not just compelling, it is grotesque." She looked at Marla. "It is the order of this court. The durable power of attorney dated June 10th is null and void. The attempted transfer on November 24th is null and void. The sale of the Mercedes 300 SL is voided, and the vehicle is to be recovered. All financial transfers from Mr. Day's accounts or the Day Freight Line accounts to Prospect Hearth LLC are deemed fraudulent and are to be clawed back. All assets of the Voss Ridge Trust are frozen and will be returned to the conservatorship of Mr. Harrison Day. Marla's face was white. The restraining order against Marla Voss is made permanent. She is barred from all properties and from any contact with Harrison or Trinity Day. Finally, the court recognizes the original, Twain will, the one found in the safe, as the binding document. Red Willow Creek Farm belongs, and has always belonged, to Miss Trinity Day. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. And, the judge said, based on the criminal indictments presented by the district attorney, Brant stood. The state indicts Marla Voss on 1 count of felony conspiracy to commit fraud and 2 counts of felony dependent adult abuse. We indict Ron Voss on 1 count of conspiracy and wire fraud, and we indict Mrs. Archer Klein on 4 counts of notary fraud. Bailiffs, the judge ordered. I watched as one bailiff cuffed a sobbing Mrs. Klein. I watched as another cuffed a belligerent Ron Voss, who was yelling that he'd been set up. And I watched as a third bailiff approached Marla. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She stood up, as regal as a queen, and put her hands behind her back. She looked at me. Her eyes were not angry. They were empty. The calculation was over. She had lost. I met my father back at the rehabilitation facility. He was packed. I was taking him home. Not to Voss Ridge, to my loft. He was standing by the window when I walked in. I didn't have to say anything. He knew. He turned and looked at me. He just looked at me. His eyes clear, the fog gone, the shame replaced by a quiet, profound relief. He took my hand. His was steady. You brought me home, Trin, he whispered. It wasn't sentimental. It was a fact. It was an exhale. It was the end of his prison sentence. I took him to my loft. I set him up in the guest room, the one with the clean lines and the wide window. He sat on the bed, looked around the minimalist, uncluttered space, and he smiled. But I had one last stop to make. Nia had secured the keys to Voss Ridge for me. The house was now part of the asset conservatorship. It was a crime scene. I let myself in the front door. The house was silent. The air was stale. The scent of gardenias finally, blessedly, faded. It was just a house. I walked into the dining room. The heavy curtains were drawn. It was dark. The long, polished table was covered in a fine layer of dust. But it was still there. On the floor, partially under the leg of Marla's chair, was the wishbone, the one that had snapped in my hand, the one that started it all. I knelt. I pulled a small, clear plastic evidence bag from my pocket. Using a pen, I nudged the 2 broken pieces of bone into the bag and sealed the top. I stood up, holding the bag. I looked across the room, at the dark alcove where Marla's photographer had stood. I looked right at the wall, right at the spot where, I knew, one of her internal security cameras was still mounted. Its little red light was off. It was just a dead lens. I held up the evidence bag. My moment ends here. Thank you for listening to my story. I would love to know where you are all listening from. So please comment below and share your thoughts. Make sure to subscribe to Lila Revenge Stories, like this video, and give it an extra boost by hitting the hype button so more people can hear this story.